I'm Courtney Gousman in for Tanya Francisco. Before we get to the top stories, let's check in with Mike Hammernick in the Weather Center to see what's going on. Mike, I hear it's going to be like 80 degrees today.
Yeah.
Former Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy speaking publicly for the first time since being forced to resign over the Laquan McDonald police shooting. New details about the night Laquan McDonald was shot and killed on Chicago's southwest side in October of 2014. The Chicago Tribune uncovered 2 Cook County Sheriff's deputies were at the scene, although they were never mentioned in any Chicago police reports. 4 people have been killed in shootings in Chicago since yesterday afternoon. In one incident, someone shot 3 teens, killing 2 of them on Chicago's south side. We're following a violent weekend in Chicago with 8 people shot in a single incident early this morning. 2 teenagers are dead after a car crashes into a tree this morning, and now the driver is in police custody. WGN's Mike Lowe is in South Suburban Park Forest with the story. Mike? Kraft Heinz is laying off hundreds of workers from its suburban headquarters. The cuts take effect immediately. WGN's Julian Cruz is at the Kraft Heinz headquarters in Northfield. To make matters worse, we have learned at least 2 children witnessed this horrific scene. Woodridge police telling us that 3 people were shot and 2 people are now dead in a scene that played out here at the Hawthorne Ridge apartment complex. Illinois State Police confirming that this was an expressway shooting that happened here on I-57 right at the inbound lanes at 115th Street. That vehicle that you see right there on the expressway, one of the vehicles involved, in fact. Just an indication of just how massive this fire truly was. This is now the 3rd trip for firefighters here. Not included in this bag tax are those thin little plastic bags that you use to put your produce in. This is not included. These are free still. And even the pastry bags that you use to put your things in and prescription bags, there's no charge for those bags either. Yes, I get to party this morning. Good morning to you guys. The day has finally come. Opening day here at Wrigley Field, and it's not just any old opening day. It's the first since the Cubs brought home that World Series championship title. A lot of new things to tell you about. One of them being this newest edition. It's called the Park at Wrigley. And Powerball fever is spreading as tonight's jackpot grows to one of the biggest ever. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Santa Claus is already on his journey around the world. You can track Santa using the NORAD Santa Tracker. It's horrendous, and that's in both directions right now. Nothing but brake lights. And I tell you, we've seen some people doing some interesting things in their vehicle this morning to pass the time. We even saw one guy looking at nude photos behind the wheel. What? Not a good thing to do, but you know, I guess, yeah. He was trying to pass the time, I suppose. He was right in front of us, and we caught some glimpses of it. So, you know, I guess you do what you gotta do. When we drove by, I didn't look because I didn't want to see what else he was doing in the vehicle, but you know.
Told you, traffic's exciting.
Like that, only in Chicago. Hashtag only in Chicago. Back to you guys. Peekaboo! And here's an update to a story we first brought you a couple days ago. A pregnant woman who was dragged during a carjacking now has a new car. Selena Gomez left her car running as she ran into a Hammond gas station. That's when 2 teens jumped in. Gonzalez tried to stop them and was dragged across that parking lot. They later abandoned the car, and it was towed to a lot in Harvey. Now, Harvey's mayor stepped in to pay that $200 towing fee, but the car was totaled. So Harvey's mayor and WK Towing pulled their money to buy Gonzalez a new car. President Trump plans to unveil his new policy toward Cuba this week. In a speech scheduled for Friday in Miami, the president is expected to demand U.S. fugitives of justice be extradited. Trump may also roll back portions of Obama-era policies which soften relations with Cuba. Officials say he will likely blast the Cuban government for human rights abuses and impose sanctions on officials suspected of carrying out the repression of dissidents. Jackson Park is the site of the Obama Presidential Center, and it sits within Chicago's Woodlawn community. Residents there are coming together to rebuild their community and control their own destiny, and they tell me they are already seeing some positive results. These elevated tracks make this thoroughfare one of the most recognized in the city. The Green Line soars above 63rd Street between Cottage and King Drive on the city's south side in the heart of Woodlawn.
Me and my friends would go on 63rd Street so we could all buy skirts and blouses that we could dress alike.
Jean Clark has some fond memories of growing up here.
Everything we wanted to do was within walking distance and safety.
African Americans integrated Woodlawn in the 1940s, and by the 1960s, Woodlawn's population peaked to well over 81,000, which was predominantly black. They patroned the theaters, clubs, stores, and restaurants up and down 63rd Street.
I remember Woodlawn when I was a child because I didn't live here, but we came down here to shop and take care of business and whatnot, and I remember all the shops and stores.
But that thriving community Deborah Adams once knew is now decades removed.
Coming back to Woodlawn, I'm driving down 63rd Street and I'm going, this makes no sense. What happened?
Adams moved into Woodlawn 6 years ago after living the suburban life for 20 years. She was more than disappointed to find those shops now reduced to empty lots and well over 600 vacant properties. Only about 24,000 live here now, and gun violence is an issue.
Right here, in the middle of the street, just started, thank God he wasn't aiming at anybody or anything, but he started shooting up in the air.
Determined to help things turn around, Adams eventually found the Network of Woodlawn, a community group focused on restoring this area.
It's up to the community to galvanize itself, to have a plan for itself.
It's headed by Dr. Byron Brazier, pastor of Southside Megachurch Apostolic Church of God. The group, over 500 strong, is made up of mostly residents and community stakeholders who are now actively working on a 20-year development plan for Woodlawn. The planning started in 2013 but became even more crucial once President Obama announced his presidential center would be built in Woodlawn's Jackson Park.
As I was speaking to some of the Obama library officials, I said the last thing you want is for the current residents to shake the hand of a new resident and welcome them to Woodlawn while that current resident is leaving.
The Network of Woodlawn has named this initiative One Woodlawn, with the primary goal of helping to shape Woodlawn's development. They're also working to prevent gentrification as the economic boom spurs around this presidential center. The group wants to preserve affordable housing options, even hiring an urban planner while trying to attract the type of businesses they'd like to see move in.
The jazz club. We're looking at a doggy grooming place. We're looking for ethnic restaurants.
The city has already started brokering some of its own development, overseeing 5 new affordable apartment buildings, announcing a modernization project for the 63rd and Cottage Green Line station, and just last month revealing plans to build a Jewel grocery store here at 61st and Cottage. It will be the first for Woodlawn in about 40 years.
Oh, I am glad. To put it mildly.
Chicago's deputy mayor says the city intends to work with Woodlawn residents to create a master plan.
The city can't just come in and say, here's what we're going to do, and then drop it and leave, right? It's about neighborhood development, and the neighborhoods are built by the people who live there.
To help attract even more development, the group is taking a hands-on approach when it comes to addressing issues like education and crime.
I'm coming home with my baby's police tape. I mean, it was like, I'm like, man, again?
Malcolm Williams says when he moved in 2 years ago, there were 7 shootings on his block that summer.
The community realizing that the police can't do everything, right? We have to do our part. And so once we did that, it changed like overnight. It went from every day to nothing.
When was the last time you had a shooting?
I remember.
Dr. Brazier says gang-related homicides in Woodlawn dropped from 23 in 2012 to 4 in 2016.
We believe that we're on the right trajectory.
Residents say Woodlawn's renaissance is happening right before their eyes, and they hope their plans will serve as a model for other struggling communities.
If you're not a part of the process, then you won't be heard.
If we want it to be the type of place that we envision giving to our children, it's not going to happen without us being involved.
With new people coming in, the young people coming back, it's going to be beautiful.
Dr. Brazier anticipates by September, the Network of Woodlawn will begin making presentations to the city about its plans. To find out more about the One Woodlawn initiative, we've placed a link on our website at WGNTV.com. Courtney Gousman, WGN News. We've all been given second chances, but the man you're about to meet proves that second chances can lead to true transformation. This is the story of a man who navigated that maze to find his way to adulthood and atonement.
The fact is that he was a child, you know, and I mean, I was too, but still, you know, that doesn't take away any guilt from me. We are where two lives would change forever.
Chicago's Back of the Yards neighborhood, here at 50th and Ada, is where Xavier McElrath Bay's innocence was snatched. This block, you guys used to own this block?
Yeah, and this for 2 blocks, actually.
The year was 1989. Xavier was just 13 years old when he helped his fellow gang members carry out the brutal murder of a 14-year-old.
He was taken to this abandoned building. It was an abandoned building, but it's a vacant lot now. And this is where he lost his life.
Xavier tells me he spotted the teen whom he believed was a rival gang member walking on this block. He helped to lure the 14-year-old into an abandoned home by offering him marijuana.
I often wished, you know, that I had the ability to go back and go to that corner, you know, and stop him and say, look, you know, don't go down that street, you know, don't go down that street. If you go down that street, you're going to lose your life.
Once inside, Xavier tells me the 14-year-old boy was beaten and then stabbed to death while Xavier stood guard outside.
I actually heard it, you know, I heard the beating, I heard the stomping, I heard the commotion, I heard all that.
2 weeks later, 13-year-old Xavier, who hadn't even finished 8th grade, was arrested, along with 3 of his fellow gang members, and charged with murder.
We both looked at each other, and I don't know what happened for Xavier, but what happened for me was he reminded me so much of my son. And I was like, this is a child. I don't think I can talk him into 40 years. I don't think I want to talk him into 40 years.
At the time, Herschella Conyers was a public defender asked to step in to help persuade the reluctant teen to take a plea deal that would sentence him to 40 years behind bars. But Conyers ended up taking over Xavier's case and talking a judge into reducing his sentence down to 25 years.
This is a box of all the letters that I got.
Out of prison for 13 years now, the 40-year-old is working to distance himself from the troubled child who was in and out of the juvenile detention center. He tells me his troubles were spurred by extreme poverty and years of physical abuse at home.
I had 19 arrests and 7 convictions. My very first arrest, in fact, took place when I was 9 years old. I got locked up for stealing a candy bar. That was my very first arrest.
While behind bars serving out his murder sentence, Xavier tells me he grew up.
I just really reflected upon my life as a whole. I thought about the victim. I thought about his family. And I realized that he was no different from me, you know. And, you know, I started to read the Bible. I started to read philosophy. I started to just question the meaning of my existence.
He went on to earn several degrees behind bars, starting with his 8th grade diploma. Xavier served 13 of his 25-year sentence, released early for good behavior. He now holds a master's degree and works for the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, a national effort pushing to get rid of life without parole for juvenile offenders.
And they will never be free, despite their positive change.
It's through public speaking Xavier often shares his life story of transformation and rehabilitation in the hopes of advocating for juvenile offenders who could benefit from a second chance.
I think that it's hard oftentimes for the courts to recognize that these are children. Despite what they did, they are underdeveloped. Their brains are not fully formed. They have the capacity for change. I understand.
Xavier spends a good amount of time in his old neighborhood to help those formerly incarcerated launch their transformation.
If they look at him, he's successful in every sense of the word, in my world at least, and they can see that in him. So that gives them an incredible amount of hope. He came from the neighborhood.
And just days ago, Xavier learned he was tapped to be a part of a working committee for the newly formed Police Accountability Task Force, which will recommend reforms for the Chicago Police Department. Xavier is one of about 50 Chicago community leaders who will be bringing ideas to the table.
We will be engaged in the community. We will be out there hearing these stories, and we'll be facing these hard to accept truths, but in reality, very necessary truths that are going to shed light upon how we can change things.
Xavier will be focusing on coming up with ideas that will facilitate a better relationship between the community and Chicago police. And it seems as if life is coming full circle for Xavier, since he'll be working alongside his former public defender, also a part of the task force.
He's a marvelous human being, you know. I mean, he fought his way back, you know. He fought his way back, and you've got to admire that.
Home life for Xavier includes his 4-year-old daughter, whom he's raising with his partner. But Xavier tells me he's committed the rest of his life to repaying his debt to society.
It was a very horrific and very heinous incident that took place, and it's the worst thing imaginable, and that's what I have to live with.
There are lots of people like him who have turned their life around. They just need to be given that second chance. His life story is so inspiring that a production crew is currently in the midst of creating a documentary on Xavier's life. If you'd like to learn more information about Xavier and the campaign for the fair sentencing of youth, head to our website, WGNTV.com.